So, Clarity Bitcoin Library, version 7. What is it about? A bit background about me. I did like quite a bit things on stacks for the last years. Sent many where you can send SBTC or other tokens to many users. A tool for convenience. I did Clarity, the cut-around swaps where you can swap SBTC to Bitcoin, and I run the fast pool. So we have some stacking cycles, and I work with Ryder to build the next generation of hardware wallets. And yeah, I want to talk a bit about the history of Clarity Bitcoin Library. So up to now, we are at version 7. We started with V1, where we had Clarity 1, and we couldn't really verify Bitcoin transactions on stacks that had that were in a flash block. So there was no corresponding stacks block on the that corresponds to the Bitcoin block. So that was fixed with Clarity version 2. So then that's the library version number 3. The version number 2, there was a bug in there, so don't use that. Then further on, we have version 4 with SegWit support, and then an advanced version V5, where we have some security updates, so that leftover data is so that you cannot manipulate the transaction with some extra data. And with version 7, that's just recent, we can now handle bigger transactions and also bigger Coinbase transactions. If you look at the transactions that we could verify with version 5, you see that we were limited to 1,240 bytes of Coinbase transactions. So this is needed for these kind of SegWit Bitcoin transactions to verify that these transactions were mined. I'm not sure how deep I should go into that, but because we needed to have an upgrade from version 5, we couldn't verify certain Bitcoin transactions. We created version 7, and for that we also increased everything else a bit. So we can now verify Bitcoin transactions with 50 inputs and outputs, and also with larger keys or scripts. Before it was limited to 128, and also the total witness data was increased. I think there was a bit too much because the total transaction could only be 4K, and we said, oh, the witness data can be 900K, but well, that's how it's encoded in version 7 for now. And also, if in the witness items, we can have up to 13 script items. The total number of transactions in a block didn't change. So that's, yeah, that's the next version of Bitcoin library. And if you look at the costs, what does it mean if you choose? So you have now the choice. From the security perspective, they are both the same, version 5 and version 7. But if you look at the cost, version 7 is a factor of 2 to 4 more expensive in the runtime costs. You can try yourself in console, in Clarinet, and check what the impact is if you use bigger buffers. So here you also see a factor of 3 3 to 4 if you increase the buffer, as we did for the script sig from 250 to 1376. But the pro is, or the what you get is that you can verify larger Bitcoin transactions. And yeah, that's what I want to say. Oh yeah, here it says. I was looking for the text, but now it hits. So only the runtime costs increase, the other costs don't change. So if you use the same transaction version 5 and version 7, then you see only an increase in the runtime cost and not in the read cost or whatever with the same data. And yeah, so this is yeah, I don't know. What is here? Yeah, okay. Now the question is how we can improve the situation, make it even better. And there are some proposals in Clarity number 4, version 4. And this Bitcoin verification can benefit from this with these new functions where we have reverse buffer that we use often in our library code, or to convert int to a buffer. That's something that we use, and it would help. And yeah, ideally we can also just get the whole transaction, but only for a specific type. So we cannot just query the stacks node for any transaction because the stacks node does not track all of these, but it tracks certain transactions, and we could store these on the stacks node so that we can query them. That would be really super. Then we can verify even more. And now, once we get the transaction, then we can decode the transaction, split it into parts, and then we can even execute the Bitcoin script in the transaction. So we can verify that not only the transaction was mined, but also that the spending condition is met on Clarity on stacks. This is all described in the proposal in the issue 71, if you're interested to look into that. And yeah, so the library is really used by Rafa already to swap tokens for Bitcoin. It's really great. Yay. That's he is testing out everything. And yeah, you presented that before already. And the next thing I'm interested in is doing smart contracts, smart wallets, so that you have assets in a contract on the Stacks blockchain and you can manage it through your Bitcoin transactions. So not only what we have at the moment that you can transfer stacks with a Bitcoin transaction, but that you can do stacking, that you can do swapping or DeFi, whatever, just by sending Bitcoin transactions, and it's executed in a in a controlled way on the Stacks blockchain. And yeah, if you're interested, we're looking for funding. But that's me. Yeah, sorry for the initial problems with the technology. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had two. Love it. Love seeing all the work, and you're
Jason, I think we can't hear you. I think you're
oh, you
perhaps.
can't hear me. Let me try
Yeah,
adjusting
yeah.
something. I'll be back in a
I mean,
second.
we can. It's coming from a distance, really. So perhaps if you come closer to the mic, maybe that might help.
All right. Is that a little better?
Much better. Yeah. Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I gotta get the settings right in Zoom. That's the thing. Awesome. Well, I was saying you're a legend in the ecosystem. We love having you out there, and I love seeing all the work you've done. So really appreciate this update. Cool to learn a little more about the upgrades across the Clarity Bitcoin library because I hadn't quite kept up with those. I was curious with the functions you're looking at and Clarity 4 implementation. Are you also considering any changes to Stacks core? Like, should any of this be easier to do, like a built-in, or does it still feel like the contract is the right place for it?
Yeah, that's a interesting discussion because as you see, the version 5 and 7 have different parameters or different impacts on your contract. If we have these as built-in functions in Clarity 4, which parameters should we use, and do we want to have different versions so that you can verify it cheaply or that you can verify larger transactions? So that's something to discuss. But the proposed functions, they are part of Clarity. So that would really simplify the library language, the library contract.
Got it. Yeah, and I see decode burn TX right there. I had missed that one before, so that totally makes sense. And then with execute Bitcoin script, you mentioned something about spending conditions. Like, does it mean that there's something that will be executed on L1, or is it proving something was executed on L1?
Yeah, the idea is that you provide a Bitcoin script, it's executed in the Stacks virtual machine, and you get the output. But it's
Oh, that
not executing anything on the Bitcoin.
and I saw BitScript just open sourced all their stuff too, so I see a killer collab coming along.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions by anybody else? Rafa, since Friedger mentioned that you're currently deploying some of these changes, any thoughts or comments you might want to share for the group?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I apologize because I missed most of the presentation. I had an issue here at home, but one question comes to mind is if if the goal is to have everything like triggered from the Bitcoin side, is this going to incur lots of like higher fees? And what do you see the use case coming from?
Well, maybe we don't even need the Bitcoin transaction, but it should feel like you're just only doing Bitcoin. And we can do that if we have the controlled structure on the Stacks blockchain side. So that it's much easier well, these smart wallets that I want to do, they enable you to rotate keys without moving your assets. It allows to set rules when you can spend, how much. It can define rules how you inherit your assets to someone else if you're not available to use it anymore. Yeah, so kind of management tool.
I'm just thinking that signing with the Bitcoin wallet is also something that I've heard of quite a bit from different builders in the space, and definitely believe this is a correct direction for Stacks.
And just from a layman perspective, this is perhaps Friedger both for you and Rafa. These updates, how are they sort of improving things when it comes to the finality aspect of it in terms of making sure that the transactions that you perform using Clarity in terms of their finality on the Bitcoin chain, how does this impact that in any way to make that part more seamless? Is there a correlation between the two?
I'm not sure I understand the question fully. So the upgrade to version 7 allows you to verify more transactions. So it's more robust. but it comes at these extra runtime costs. Was that the question?
No, it was really more of a layman perspective, coupled with a question, in terms of one key value adds for Stacks is that the transactions that you make on Stacks, their finality is secured on the Bitcoin chain as well. And I was curious how these updates essentially play a part in improving that particular aspect of Stacks.
Yeah, no, it's more enabling functionality on Stacks through a Bitcoin transaction. So it's not adding anything to the Stack side, other than that you have, that you can use Bitcoin transactions to trigger something on Stacks.
Right.
And so it's just the flow that you do the Bitcoin transaction first, and then you trigger the Stacks transaction with the input of the Bitcoin transaction, and that does something on the Stack side.
Right.
So if there's a reorg, that's a different discussion. On the Bitcoin side, what do we do then? But yeah, generally this is more just adding more of a trigger, adding something to the Stacks blockchain, to the Stack side, not about the finality.
Right. Which leads to another thought, which is that generally the discussion and a lot of work is going on around how, other chains can essentially collapse into Bitcoin because of the security and obviously because of the immutability aspect of it. This seems to be the other way around, right? Is there a particular reasoning behind, like, is there a utility behind doing this, which is particularly useful?
The main thing is the wrapping or the exchange. So Bitcoin for Stacks or for SBTC. So you can release, so you can put something in escrow on the Stack side, and then you can release this on the Stack side once a certain Bitcoin transaction was executed. And that's trustless. So there's no one in between, it's only the code that verifies that Bitcoin was transferred to a certain address, and therefore the assets in the escrow can be released.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. That was actually something pretty powerful because we're using that tech that Rafa built on top of this too, as well with our product. And what it enables is you can literally go from Bitcoin to SBTC in one Bitcoin block. And I don't know of many other ways you can do that. Like usually you got to wait for the confirmations, everything else. But because through Clarity, we can read Bitcoin state, we can see what's happening on L1. We can go, hey, that transaction happened. I'm good to go. I'm forking with Bitcoin. I have the security in that as well, so that I can release this right away. We can make that process happen. And it is buttery smooth. It is really cool.
And I want to build on this towards what Faison said. I think that the fact that Stacks has this ability to, go from Bitcoin to Stacks and trigger these things on Stacks. And as other blockchains want to collapse into Bitcoin, perhaps they'll be able to leverage, BitScript and all these BitVM technology, nascent technology. But if they ally it with what Stacks can do, then they can do both sides. And that is potentially very powerful for systems that could be cross-chain, completely autonomous from one side to the other.
Yeah, very interesting. Any additional thoughts, guys? Any follow-up questions or any additional thoughts that anyone would like to add?
Yeah, I think we are over time, but very quick question. So, do we also plan in going the other way around, like doing something on Stacks and making it happen on Bitcoin eventually? So, what we are building right now, and then maybe issuing some funds on Stacks, they get used in places, but then people can do another call in Clarity and release those funds in maybe Bitcoin in the L1.
So probably you could just unwrap SBTC, but that's the only thing I could imagine how you can get funds onto the L1.
Right, but then the proposal in Clarity 4 that you have up there to execute Bitcoin script would kind of solve for that a little bit too, wouldn't it?
No, this is just the emulation of,
Emulation.
yeah, just an emulation of the,
Got it. That way you could run the same thing through the Stacks VM. I get it now.
yeah, and so you can verify that this spending script is the right one that you want to be included in the Bitcoin transaction.
Can you elaborate on your answer, Friedger? Like, why do you think we could only do SBTC on wrap?
Because Bitcoin does not know anything about stacks. So how can we do anything on Bitcoin? The only I don't know, entity or something that is related to stacks that lives on the Bitcoin layer is the signers, the SBTC signers. So they can do that, but otherwise I don't think we can do anything else on the L1. Does it make sense?
At the moment, but it seems like just from a pure first principle logic, if you could do it for SBTC via that signer system, perhaps this could be extended in the future to other assets.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. If we have a trusted system, yeah, would be possible then, yeah.
Is this related to the self-custodial wrapping system for SBTC, the idea you mentioned?
The self-custodial, what do you mean?
Yeah,
Say again?
yes, self-custodian, like the ability to unwrap SBTC without the need of unilaterally.
I think that so they like the SBTC version 2.
Yes.
Yeah. I no, I wasn't thinking about that at the moment. Um, yeah, I don't know. I cannot say anything at the moment there.
Suspense, suspense. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, sorry.
But I think it's good. I think the discussion is what's needed, right? And the whole effort, the intent is to generate ideas and just have conversations. So perhaps that idea can be used at some point in the development stage as Clarity evolves.
Yeah,
Maybe
let's
yeah.
have a discussion afterwards.
Yeah. We're 5 minutes over, but since we have a discussion ongoing and we do have Friedger on the call, it's an opportunity for anybody who's here. So if anybody has any thoughts and questions, I would suggest now is the opportunity to ask before we wrap it up. All right, Friedger, any closing remarks from your side before we end the call and the lightning talk?
Well, looking forward to Clarity 4, and yeah, we should discuss SIP 31, but maybe not now.
Absolutely. All right, guys, thank you everybody for joining the lightning talk. And Friedger, special thanks to you for preparing the slides and for giving us an overview. Right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Friedger.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.